COVID-19 has impacted the whole world negatively, and while the repercussions of this disease are not yet to be fully felt until maybe years after the current crisis is over, it has particularly impacted the Middle East region for a number of reasons. The first reason is that we are already living in an economic slowdown brought about by the decline in oil prices, which started in 2014. So the region has already been suffering from many economic difficulties without the corona disease. With the corona disease, the region is expected to move even further into economic slowdown, but this time without anyone that is able to bail it out. In the past, Gulf states, because of the abundance of oil and financial reserves, in the past, whenever there was a large crisis in the region, Gulf states were able to step in and help with their own resources in order to bail out the region. This time, there is no one to bail anyone out. Gulf states already are witnessing a huge drop in their reserves because of oil prices, which have even gone further down as a result of the corona disease. And so countries of the region will have to depend on themselves from now on. And the third reason is that this region already suffers from a lack of governance, a lack of systems, whether they are political, economic, or social, that are able to deal with a crisis of this magnitude. And it's becoming clear that countries now are scurrying to deal with an issue without having the proper infrastructure that allows them to be able to handle such a problem at such a magnitude. For all these reasons, the Middle East is expected to face serious difficulties, I believe, as a result of the crisis. And it is also maybe a turning point where countries of the region will have to decide whether their old governance systems, which have been weak, ineffective, partly because Arab countries have not themselves invested in strengthening these systems, these countries will have to decide whether they can go on doing things the way they were, or whether this is something of the past. I think there is a tendency that we might witness with some Arab countries to keep in place some of the restrictions and some of the measures that have been taken in order to deal with this crisis that have limited people's freedoms and people's movement, restrictions that are necessary today to deal with the disease, but not ones that can, prepare for a better, prosperous and stable future. And so, as a result of the corona disease, I think countries of the region will have to resist, if they are to be successful, will have to resist the temptation to keep in place some of the measures that, restrictive measures that have been adopted today. If economic conditions were difficult before the corona crisis, they are almost impossible today. We're going to witness individuals and entities that will go bankrupt. We're going to witness a large increase in unemployment. The world is not going to be the same post-corona as we have known it. Governments will have to take serious economic reform measures to deal with this situation, measures that are going to be very difficult on the average citizen. And these measures will not be accepted by people unless they feel they are part of the decision-making process. So new social contracts, if they were necessary before, they're crucial now. Countries will not be able to move forward in dealing with the aftermath of the corona crisis unless their citizens feel they are part of the decision-making process, and unless the decision-making process is widened in a way that people feel they are being treated in an inclusive manner. This is of the utmost importance. We cannot deal with this situation in a technical economic way only. It will have to be dealt with a political angle as well. Do countries realize this fact? It's early to tell. My prediction is that countries which do and which understand that those with relatively good governance systems in the health sector did much better than those with weaker health systems, even in countries where financial resources were not great. This is a lesson that governance from now on cannot be divided, and that if countries are to really move forward, they will have to be more serious in putting in place governance systems that extend beyond the health sector, and that also put in place political institutions, economic institutions, social institutions that are solid and that can deal with future crises as they arise. I think it will be very destabilizing for the region if countries do not do this in place. Countries of the region have lost two main tools that they used even before the corona crisis in keeping their citizens quiet. They lost the carrot and the stick. The stick, which they used until 2011 of security services, that fear has been lost as of 2011 when people went to the street and were no longer willing to accept to live the way they did before. And the carrot was lost in 2014 when countries also lost the financial tool that they also used to keep their citizens quiet with the decline of oil prices. Today, with the corona disease, the effect is multiplied. And the economic situation, if it was difficult before, it is extremely difficult today to overcome. And so, in my view, countries do not have a choice. Those who insist on living by yesterday's rules will pay the price, as countries paid the price in the first wave of the Arab uprisings. In Egypt, in Syria, in Libya, in Yemen. And it's a heavy price that those countries are still paying for. So there is no logical choice. Whether countries will, will accept logic and behave accordingly, of course, it's still a big question. We do not have many examples in the world where authoritarian governments on their own were able to put in place reform measures, but it's not impossible. And I think that this is an opportunity that the region cannot afford to waste.